Today we'll have our poetry event. It will be handled by Patricia Cherin. Dr. Cherin is a Cal State Dominguez Hill retired faculty, and she's a resident poet. She has over 100 publications in journals. She has published 2 chapbooks. One is called Familiarities, which she worked on with Jared Lachlan, and she had Park Quest. And she also has a book called Journey in Flagrante from Level 4 Press. So, with all due respect, I'd like to introduce to you guys Patricia Cherin.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Letha. You did a wonderful job managing the setup, and we're all very grateful. I think this is the 4th or the 5th year that we have celebrated April as Poetry Month here at Cal State Dominguez Hills with a poetry event. I do want to thank the planners, especially Mary Cruz, who isn't here today, but who's had a great deal to do with planning this event, and she is my initial contact every year. The way I am envisioning our couple of hours going is I'm going to talk a little bit about Poetry Month, and then I'm going to introduce our special guest speaker, who will read and entertain questions about poetry and writing. And then I'm going to read briefly, and then we will open it up to all of your wonderful readings and poems. So, in the past, during a poetry event, we've had a unifying theme. I've been asked to come up with a theme, and we've had one year was beginnings, one year was endings, one year was spring. But this year, all themes are germane in the poetry marketplace, because we're having a poetry fair. All poetic wares are appropriate. All poetic dispositions, modes, and subjects are welcome. Poetry is capacious as a genre. It has great latitude, great capacity. Poetry, and I'm paraphrasing Walt Whitman here, who contained multitudes in himself, poetry itself contains multitudes. And I gathered just a few thoughts about the spectrum of ideas that poetry can address. Robert Pinsky, a past Poet Laureate of the United States, talks about poetry gloom. He talks about the mysterious disaffection, the careless doubts. Garrett Hongo writes about word clouds, thinking in spatial and drifting meteorological terms. Charles Simic says there is poetry in the accidental. And I think that many of us are called to write as we go about our day, and things happen to us that we perhaps hadn't expected. To John Crowe Ransom, a poem is an organism in action. To Robert Creeley, a poem is energy transformed. To Ivor Winters, one of the old guard from Stanford, a poem is a state of perfection at which a poet arrives by whatever means. To Allen Ginsberg, that wonderful great beat icon, the poetic tradition is the voice out of the burning bush. To Jack Spicer, poets are singers and entertainers. All right.
That's good.
Well, because one year we did have a spring theme for Poetry Month, I'm starting with a couple of spring poems. I thought that my wonderful husband would be here today. Between classes, he was going to drive down from Cal State Fullerton before he went to his class at Irvine, but I think he didn't make it. But I'm very, very fond of my husband, especially after 47 years of marriage, maybe only after 47 years of marriage. But, this is called Spring Cleaning. I've got the trash cans ready. The A-list, keep for sure. The B-list, negotiable. The C-list, chuck it. When I'm on a cleaning spree, you're lucky you still have sentimental value. Many of us just went on Easter egg hunts with children and grandchildren over the last week. It's always a wonderful, wonderful ritual. And I wrote this poem about discovering a relic from many Easters past. An Orient-Occident alliance. Fidencio the gardener just found an Easter egg buried Chinese style from the last great vernal hunt several years ago. I could not tell whether it was lavender or striped, or whether paraffin scribbles marked it as Dylan's or Sarah's. It withheld itself out of view all this time, mummifying, as the kids were growing strong and healthy, not to be used for dinner or dynasty or equinoctial ceremonies. It is instead its own homunculus of sun, dense, packed yellow. It wanted nothing to do with us. Thank you. I think many of us write poems to celebrate all the beatitudes and beneficences of life. For many of us, it is almost a requisite kind of activity. And it's a necessary part of making good days. This is called It Hurts, Doc. Psychiatrists, acolytes of culture, help those having imaginative trouble, an ardent ailment whose etiology is thought to be cerebral, even though the heart receives referred pain. We are not neatly head and heart, Maria Causeway, or any of the bifurcators of centuries ago or of the present. We are not cleaved into organs of ice and flame. Body and soul, thinking and feeling, psyche and corpus, ideas only, metaphors of form and longing that cling to one another, like lovers so in love they would die without each other. And they do. Ache of the imagination requires analgesics other than aspirin or Prozac, incapable of soothing some syllogisms and tired dialectics. Ache of the imagination needs poetry and clear new thought and wonder. Lots of this.
Yeah.
I bid at a charity auction on a gondola ride for 14 people, and I won it. And it was kind of an interesting evening because there were 16 people in my immediate family, and the gondola would hold only 14. And so my husband and I thought we would wait on the shore for the rest of the family. We didn't have to ultimately because my son and granddaughter decided to row along on their paddle boards. It made me very grateful to be living at a time when I didn't have to see my little ones, my dear ones, my progeny go off to a new world, never to see them again. Gondola to the New World. For a family treat, we booked a gondola ride through the serene and glittery canals of Naples on Christmas Eve. There is room in the boat for all but two. David and I will wait for our dear ones on the shore and think of the leave-takings throughout the centuries, mothers and fathers watching their sweethearts sail off to the new world to escape famine or fanatics, the besotted young going gallantly to dreams or to dragons' mouths at the edge of the world. My beloveds will return in an hour, merry, bright, renewed. My good fortune in the arc of history to see them after their journey yet again. very lucky to take about 27 units from Jerry Laughlin when I was an undergraduate. And my husband-to-be took about 27 units from Jerry Laughlin as an undergraduate. And so we both have a common reference of general allusions that we learned in Jerry's class. And one of the things that we learned early on, I think, just as it was coming into being, was chaos theory. Direct application of chaos theory. The butterfly that flaps its wings half a world away produces a cause and effect that proliferates and factors in waves of change, elegant and unchartable. Here in my hemisphere, it's a goddamn mess. 50 things stacked up, and more tomorrow. Papers and files, demands and delegations, folly and phones. Consequences unimaginable with the opening and closing of the fateful Lepidoptera. Did my butterfly spread its labial wings just a bit off center? This is a love poem. Real as can be. I truck in the metaphoric empiric. Figurations you can measure, quantify, chart. I see love and hate, Keats' equilibriums of truth and beauty, precisely. I can measure decibels and chart colors. The vastness of my love for you and you and you, for all the objects of dearness, is not abstract at all, but blinding bright, leagues this deep, that wide, so far. I turn over now in my hand the associative literal, smooth as glass, green as pasture, throbbing like my heart. This is spirit brim. I am filled. The cup of me runneth over. In bounties and plenitudes, I offer generosities, sponsor giveaways. I have more than needed. There have been times I have needed to take, plunder from those I loved and from those I didn't, and I have done so. If you need some of me, call or text or email. I will put you in my calendar. This is Only Hummingbirds Fly True North. Every morning I spit on my finger and hold it to the fates. If only they would direct me simply, east, south, north, west. I do not know where to turn. I try the direction of sunrise and lean toward here or there, the door or the dresser, the ocean or inland. I plow through this blue-checked bedroom with swooping arms. The air parts to my left and right, forward and backward. There is a direction between straight and bent. The gyres dance there. The gyres that you taught me, Jerry, in Yeats. I walk that selvage, an arc of wonder and yearning. There is no light or lightness, but color is there. All day I walk this arc I cannot plot, bed to coffee pot, table to desk, sink to your arms. The zigzag makes me dizzy. The verge barely holds. All we have of salvation is frayed. Okay, I'm going to read, I think, just two more.
Excuse me, would you aim the mic at your mouth?
Okay,
Because
are you not hearing?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you for speaking up. Okay. And just stop me in the middle if you can't hear. Okay, okay, thank you. You know, relationships are cultures. Marriage is a culture, and it's so wonderful, the accumulations that build up of knowing allusions. And I was done with pets, done with raising children, pets, and this bird started to peck at my husband's leg on the patio. You know what's coming. And it wouldn't let him go. He called animal control. Animal control came out, took the bird to the animal shelter. David went to visit the bird every day. And the minute that the bird could be adopted, David was there with a cage, brought the bird home. I said, all right, the bird is yours. You're taking care of the bird. Well, you know what's happened. This is called bird love. I could care less about the bird, which David patiently cares for, selecting the best mullet, rye, sunflower, and the freshest water. I do nothing for the well-being of our feathered pet. But it does its circle dance just for me, imagining in its bird mind my fine, resplendent plume. The biological mechanics, we call them nature, squawk the great unfairness all day long, as if any of us needed another lesson. David gets quite viciously pecked. I get yearning, unrequited, side-eyed adoration, and great round-necked swoons of bird love. This is my last poem. I have 2 sons and 1 daughter and 3 daughters-in-law whom I adore. My daughter married a lovely woman a few years ago, and they have adopted, well, actually Sarah was the biological mother of this beautiful baby, Annie, who's now 10 months old. So I wrote this poem last May, after our last poetry session, so it's new to you. And I wrote this just about a week before Annie's delivery date was scheduled. And I was wondering, it was Mother's Day, just about Mother's Day, how they were going to negotiate Mother's Day. So this is Mother's Day to 2 moms. Annie Jean, you will be born a week from tomorrow. Your birth has been booked like a reservation at Chianina. You are standing straight in the womb, facing forward like a Chinese terracotta warrior, imperial, majestic. You are the yearnings and sweetness of 2 moms. The museum frame has double Madonnas and 1 child. Mary Cassette will need more paint for figuration. Your lullaby will be sung in harmony. The bow will break twice. You will play catch infield and out and slam 2-door articles in his canon. He has been called by friends and editors pathologically kind. I just love that phrase. If we could all aspire to that particular kind of sickness. And he is notorious, using that same metaphor, notorious for helping young writers and aspiring writers and beginning writers achieve publication and help them with their craft. He is a professor emeritus of English from Cal State University, Long Beach, where he helped found the Master of Arts in Creative Writing program. And in fact, the 49ers School of Poetry is named after Jerry. His works are collected in the Gerald Laughlin Collection in the Special Collections Department of Cal State Long Beach's library. And I'd like to just share a personal anecdote with you about how important Gerald Laughlin has been to my life. And I'm only one of thousands of former students whom he has helped over the years. I was 18 years old, and I just walked in by accident, okay, there's that accident, to an English class at Cal State Long Beach. And Gerald Laughlin was the professor. I had no idea who he was. And in the 50 minutes of that class time, he went over the entire history of aesthetic movements and literary traditions from classicism to, well, we weren't postmodern then, so from classicism to modernism. And I was an undeclared major at that point. I walked down the hill at Long Beach State to the administration building and declared myself an English major on the spot. And I have been very grateful because words and human meaning making have made my life. I am a contented person because of the texture of language that I have been exposed to through people like Gerald Laughlin. And I was privileged to be asked by the editors of the Dictionary of Literary Biography, okay, to write an entry on Gerald Laughlin, okay, for their collection of American artists. So I thought I would leave that out. I've marked the section where Gerald Laughlin is mentioned, and I thought during break that people might want to look through that. Introduce our very special guest, Jerry Laughlin.
Thank you, Trish, and thank all of you for being here. As we are, and I guess we were modernists when she was first in my class. I still say that I write like a postmodernist, but I admire the modernists more than I do my own generation, I think. You know. Anyway, I still enjoy them, the great modernist writers of England and America. And I think in those days I was a Victorian too, perhaps a romantic, maybe a Victorian, you know, maybe a medievalist in fact, my social attitude. Okay, I have a couple of relatively new books out that I've brought along today. The most recent that just came out a week ago is called Poets and Pleasure Seekers, New and Selected Poems, 2010 to 2015. And put out by Spout Hill Press, which is edited by a former student of mine, John Branningham, and his wife, Ann. She did most of the editing on this particular volume. And it's a collection of recent poems, as it says. And this is one from Coagula Publications, Coagula Art Journal, and Coagula Gallery, if you know them up in LA. They're Matt Gleason's art gallery in Chinatown up there. He has a magazine, the Coagula Art Review, or Art Journal, which he has edited for many years. And for about 6 years, he ran a column of mine of art poems in every issue. 6 times a year it came out. And then at the end of my run in that column, he decided to collect them into 2 volumes of poetry. And the first volume was entitled You Need Never Look Out a Window Again. And the second one here, which is poems, ekphrastic poems about art, about individual artworks or about art in general, is called This Marriage of Man the Maker and Mother Nature, which I suppose has something to do with nature and nurture, you know, and the birth and the environmental factors. So I'll read, I think, a couple from that to start out the day. Maybe only one of them. This harkens back a few years from a painting by Richard Diebenkorn entitled Girl Smoking. Elegant legs gracefully crossed, not Hopper's palette, but a diva on a divan, knowing she's attractive, but without illusions of divinity, thus not a prima donna. Vulnerable shoulders, a nipple out of nowhere. She hugs herself, supports an elbow on a forearm. Anxiety as well as inhalation, sophistication, but not exactly Duke Ellington either. The room an atmosphere of color and cologne. Home from the dance, home from the date, home from the cabaret. A lady in waiting, wondering if he will show. We used to be able to feel good about the way we smoked, the way we looked when smoking. It was theater. A lot of women that I dated used to smoke. After sex, a cigarette, a drink, pleasure after pleasure, sitting up in bed or at a kitchen table, killing time until the next time, friendly conversations with each other, with ourselves. They write me sometimes, now married with grown children, spacious homes and gardens, justly proud and doting husbands. Good times, they say. We had good times. They were good times. You say, I don't know if you will remember me. Oh yes, yes, I do, now more than ever. After 30 or more years, a sketch, a smoky reverie of red coiffure, a femininity gone out of fashion. Yes, yes, they were the best of times, though perilous, now proved imperishable. My God, I'm glad that I have women to remember, and that to some at least, I meant good times. This is called American Art at the End of the Millennium. Here's a little postmodernism. Elvis Presley pulled out his six-shooter, struck a manly pose, and shot Andy Warhol. There were many Elvises, but only one Andy. Thus, the Elvises shot Andy many times. Andy went down gracefully, as might be expected, and with dignity, his trademark white wig undisturbed. Then Elvis shot Jackson Pollock. It didn't matter that Jackson was already dead. Elvis shot him anyway, many times. Jackson just smiled and swigged another, straight from the bottle, though riddled like Dick Tracy. Elvis tracked Robert Smithson along a spiral path to the end of a jetty. There he shot him, many times. Robert just sort of tipped over into the Great Salt Lake. The trillions of sand fleas were at first angered, then settled down to their version of a Thanksgiving feast. Finally, Elvis shot Jeff Koons' metallic rabbit. But since the bunny was the very emblem of postmodern reflexivity, the bullet was deflected back into the brain of Elvis. Actually, the bullet was larger than the brain of Elvis, though smaller than his liver. That was it for Elvis. That was it for pop culture, as high culture at least. Pop culture was once again pop culture. Thus, with Elvis out of the way, the artist of the new millennium was free to do something different from what art had been doing. Maybe even something as radically different as what artists used to do, back when they were expected to do things most people couldn't. Yeah, I should have mentioned Matt Gleason, the owner of the Coagula Gallery and publisher of these books, that book anyway that I read from, and of that journal. We got along very well because we were both such curmudgeonly people, you know, so generally negative in our outlook, you know, and I hope nobody goes out of here today with any positive thinking. Okay, this is the most recent book, Poets and Pleasure Seekers, which was a line in one of the poems in here. I didn't pick it exactly, but that's okay. Maybe at heart, the counter girl at the corner Mexican restaurant takes my order of 1 cheese enchilada, 1 shrimp taco, 1 grilled fish taco, 1 order of chips, and 1 small diet Pepsi. It says, "Monday is senior discount day, sir. How old are you?" 73, I say. "What?" she says. I repeat my age. "Oh," she says and smiles. "I thought you were trying to tell me that you're only 17. Okay, well, yeah, here's one. Yeah, this'll get us off on the right downer of a note. I hate Hollywood. I hate its blockbusters. I hate its expensive blockbuster theaters. I hate its parking problems. I hate its potholes. I hate its drug dealers and I hate their customers. I hate its gang mentality. I hate its rip-off apartments and motels and restaurants. I hate its clubs, but I love its cemeteries. I hate its lack of loyalty, and I hate its rip-off royalties. I hate the way its kids are raised. I hate everything old about it, and I hate everything new. I hate the way everyone votes for the same people, and then votes to recall them. I hate its celebrities who try to be poets, and I hate its poets who aspire to be celebrities. I hate its hypocrisies, and I hate its theocracies. I hate everything Fitzgerald, Faulkner, West, and Hemingway hated about it. I hate what it did and tried to do to Bukowski. I hate its ersatz Bukowskians. I hate the Hollywood sign, the Hollywood Bowl, the Hollywood bowling alleys, the Hollywood Hills, the Hollywood Canyons, and I do not discriminate in my hatred of all the residents of any race and all its tourists who stare at the Chinese theater. And I hate the homeless who mug them and murder them. But I applaud that they burn down each other's homes and businesses and flatten each other's tires. I even hate things that are non-existent, such as its entire infrastructure, whose pipes burst every day because they didn't have a dollar spent on them in 100 delusional years. Obviously, I don't hate its earthquakes. I don't hate Ed Rushaw's painting of a Hollywood sunset behind a Hollywood sign, even though it means the sun is somehow settling in the north. I don't hate Randy Newman because if you read between the lines, he hates Los Angeles also. I hate those foolish drivers who lead police on car chases and then are surprised when they're rewarded with cracked skulls. I have adrenal glands also, lots of them. Maybe I should admit that Hollywood seduced the love of my life away from me, but I am far too sophisticated, as you can see, to allow that to jaundice my urbane appraisal of the woods of Holly. Grand Madonna and Child. When our daughter's first child was born 8 months ago, I was overjoyed for her. And as for myself, well, my attitude has always been, the more the merrier. I knew my wife was really looking forward to this, more than she would let on, but I had no idea that it would be the start of a whole new life for her. She has practically abducted the kid. That's an exaggeration. She is third in line after the mother and father. But as I tell people, she is running a very strong third. This summer, for instance, she rises at 5 a.m. to wake up gradually and drive half an hour each way to babysit from 7:15 a.m. to 6 p.m. so the parents, their parental leave exhausted, and return to their jobs. She grabs a breakfast snack, packs a lunch, and arrives home too late for me to take her out for dinner. It's a second motherhood for her. Bottles and baby food, diapers, tidying laundry, quick reads during naps, daily outings on walks or to the park, by stroller or car seat, with the happy dog always on its best behavior. When I ask how it's going, she confesses all the little indications that her grandson is the sweetest, cutest, brightest little boy since her own kids were born. We've been together over 40 years. We have, to put it as mildly as baby lotion, had our occasional differences, like constantly. But I've never wished her unhappiness, although I've certainly contributed to it. Still, I would never have guessed that she could ever have found herself this happy, this ecstatic, this fulfilled, this transformed, this redeemed again. I should have warmed up the vocals a little bit to breathe, hayacho, sul tuo amore in fronto, ridi del tuo, che avvelena il coro. Thank you, that's one of the best things I ever wrote. This is the iceberg theory. It's from a little chapbook called The Iceberg Theory. All the food critics hate iceberg lettuce. You'd think romaine was descended from Orpheus's laurel reed. You'd think raw spinach had all the nutritional benefits attributed to it by Popeye. Not to mention aesthetic subtleties worthy of Verlaine and Debussy. They'll even salivate over chopped red cabbage, just to disparage poor old Mr. Iceberg lettuce. I guess the problem is, it's just too common for them. It doesn't matter that it tastes good, has a satisfying crunchy texture, holds its freshness, and has crevices for the dressing, whereas the darker or leafier varieties are often bitter, gritty, and flat. It just isn't different enough, and it's too damn American. Of course a critic has to criticize. A critic has to have something to say. Perhaps that's why literary critics purport to find interesting so much contemporary poetry that just bores the shit out of me. At any rate, I really enjoy a salad with plenty of chunky iceberg lettuce. The more the merrier. Drenched in an Italian or Roquefort dressing. And the poems I enjoy are those I don't have to pretend that I'm enjoying. This is from a nice collection a few years ago, new and selected poems from 1967 to 2008, actually. Not all of them from those years, but a couple. It takes a busy man. He hadn't made a dent in his list for weeks. One of the items was, call Z. Then one day Z's wife called to say that Z had died. He was ashamed to catch himself indulging in a feeling of accomplishment as he crossed call Z off his list. Try to do one thing every day.
I love that.
My kind of guy. Leaving the downtown bar at closing, I hear this one young guy say to his buddy, "You got any beer at your place?" And the buddy says, "I got some Colombian and a little Coke, and there's a guy right in the neighborhood who would bring over some heroin." And the first guy says, "Well, yeah, but do you have any beer?" I've always enjoyed her sense of humor. She's an old friend and I don't see her very often, but she has a way of turning up when I'm talking to a girl I've just met. And she will invariably storm up to us and confront me with, "Where is the child support check?" Then turn on her heel and storm from the room, leaving me to make inadequate explanations. And I have a couple poems in it. Again, doesn't have I Hate Hollywood in it, but green corn tamales. First in Tucson, now at El Cholo in LA, on western just south of Olympic. My wife and I make a point of enjoying them once a summer. All tamales are not hot. These are sweet with the syrup of young corn, steamed within the husks. Even the thin strand of a green pepper seems sweet. Even the morsel of tender chicken seems sweet. Sweet as sweethearts on the evening promenade above the beach at Mazatlan. Sweet as summer evenings, Sweet is the respite, the renewal at the end of day. Think sweetly of green corn tamales, remembering that the water of the desert, hoarded by the thirsty cactus, is the sweetest water. Well, look what just popped up here out of nowhere. I guess this was meant to appear today. What is this anyway? This scrap of a paper book cover? Let's see, what does it say? It says 1972. It says from the book Poop and Other Poems. But who is that on the cover? Yeah. No?
Must be you.
Yeah.
Must be. Your hair's a little darker.
A little darker, a lot more of it too. Yeah, I'm afraid that's true. And yeah, holding a can of Coors. I never actually drank Coors, but I did hold it in my hand because that's all they had there. And a rubber fish in the tub there. And this was in an apartment of religious fanatics. So I can't understand why exactly I was in that tub.
Symbol of Christianity.
Doing that. Exactly,
The fish is
probably. Yeah. Well, I always tell people at readings, especially the younger people who weren't around then, this shows what you could do and what you could get away with in 1972 and still teach college. I'm going to read a little bit from a book. I write a lot of prose, a lot of fiction, but it doesn't get read as often as this is a book called A Simpler Time, A Simpler Place, 3 Mid-Century Stories. The first of them is a novella, actually. I started it the day after I finished my defense of my dissertation at the University of Arizona with a dissertation on Nathaniel West. And I wanted to get right back into things, and not have that drop off that you have after a long project like that, the doctoral studies. And I wrote it that summer, and I still like it as well as anything I ever wrote. It's about it's based on a priest that I know, loosely known in Rochester, New York, in the parish St. Monica's Parish, that I was growing up Catholic. And, pardon?
Father Grappi?
No, it wasn't. And if it were, I wouldn't tell you, because you know why if you read this. Here's part of the example of why not. On the back cover, they picked a little bit of prose, and then I'll read a page or two from it. But I idolized the guy. He was wonderful. He was very athletic and young and vital, and he played ball with us, in the gym. And he was a passionate guy, and unfortunately, as it turned out, or fortunately, in many ways. But Ellen sat waiting in the Buick while Father Dean Finn checked in at the motel office. He always registered them as Mr. and Mrs. George Adams of Syracuse, New York. There was no objection to a couple without luggage taking a room for a couple of hours at the Hit the Sack Motel. The desk clerk, a poorly shaven, perpetually smirking man of 35 lewd years, had managed in the midst of an ambiance of sexuality, which should have inoculated him against disgust, to cultivate a urinal of a mind. People came to his office thinking of their affair as a matter of love, or fun, or nature, or bawdry, or even mystical oneness. The desk clerk never allowed these patrons to raise him to their level of innocence. Rather, he saw to it that their ecstasies went not unashamed. His grin evoked for them the puritanism of their parents, the prurience of the adolescent gang, the hellfire of the preachers, the cankers of sex hygiene movies, the self-consciousness of the stag party. Finn hated the man. He was always tempted to sprinkle holy water on him. This is a very small passage from the book. I still like the guy. I never saw him after the end of his time there at St. Monica's, but I wish him all the well in his life, really. How old, for instance, was Sister Rose Joseph, wizened and bespectacled, who nodded to him as she limped up the walk. She might be any age from 50 to 75. The range was less for Sister Joan, who could as easily be 25 as 35. Her face was chubby and youthful, except for her eyes, which were getting dark, strained. She wore the inevitable plain-rimmed glasses which neutralized, desexed so many of the nuns. If he could not even estimate the age of these women, how could he hope to understand whether they were happy or resentful, normal or abnormal, actually close to God or just as removed as himself? Good evening, Father. Good evening, Sister. Are you feeling better these days? I'm getting around better now, thank you, Father. How has your summer been? Very much like last summer, he lied, and like the summer before that, hot and busy and frustrating. I was going to say uneventful. Maybe your word is better. They stepped off the path to let the other nuns pass. Sister St. Anselm was the principal of the school and the superior of the convent. She too, Finn thought, was one of those who had never been young and thus could never grow old. He had known her for 3 years, and her appearance had not changed, in spite of worries, illnesses, and aging. I assume some of you wear bifocals, you know? This one has a line across it, which is the only thing that is ever in front of my eyes. She was strict with nuns and pupils alike, and popular with both. Finn, who disliked intensely many of the other older nuns, and a few of the younger, liked Sister St. Anselm. She was kind, not pious, and she treated him like a nephew. Do you still play golf, Father? When I have time. You must be getting quite expert by now. The improvement is slow, Sister. I was afraid that might be the case. Golf is the wrong sport for you. I'm much happier when I see you playing basketball with your boys. You need to run a lot. Why is that? Because of your youth, your tremendous energy. It must be very hard for you to do all the trivial jobs of a parish priest. Your soul must always be wanting to run away, just to run away and run. I pray for you, Father. I always pray for you. Finn was moved. Why me, Sister? Because you're like the boys in school who are always driving their teachers mad because they want to be doing something. They're through their readers while the rest of the class is back on the first story, and they don't have anything to do. Or they can't wait to get away from school and play ball until supper, and then again after supper. And they come in the next day without their spelling lesson memorized. And they hate fire drills and walking in lines and saying prayers and rest periods and staying after school. I tell the teachers, can't you see, Sister, that that boy is a runner, and it's torture for him to have to walk along with the rest. I love the runners, and I pray for them, and I pray for you too, Father, because you're always going to be a little boy and a runner. Finn said, thank you, Sister. Then he looked past her shoulder because he was embarrassed. The old nun turned back to the path, saying, God will watch over you, Father Finn. He watches over all my runners. A note from home. When the good-looking 45-year-old woman at the pool, with whom Toad is a persona, you know, in a lot of my stories, is always kidding around, announces that she is in the market for a new boyfriend, her present one of 10 years duration being unable to tear himself away from his dog in Hawaii to join her in California. Toad replies, as all the other men have, look no further. Momentarily caught off guard, he being 60, she recovers with, I'm afraid I'll have to ask for a note from your wife. Okay, Toad says, but I'm going to have to wait for the perfect time to present her with a request of that nature. The next time they find themselves passing in adjoining lanes, she says, "Did you ask your wife for that note?" And he replies, "She says she'll be only too glad to write it, but she's wondering if it should be more in the nature of a character reference or of a permission to go on a field trip." A couple of weeks later, when she tells him that, incredibly, she hasn't been getting asked out, he suggests, "Maybe there's just too much paperwork involved." And when she's about to leave the next day for a week in Hawaii, partly to size up how things stand with the old boyfriend, Toad says, "Tell him there's a guy back here who's practicing forging his wife's signature." Before I read this last one of the day, and I thank you all again for being such a wonderful audience, I have some copies of books here. If any of you want one, I'm not selling them, but I will give one and sign it to anybody who would like one until I run out of them. That's if anybody asks. I've been told I can't give away my books. Publishers say that. She's bright, good-looking, and at 45 could pass, like all the women who swim at the Y, for years younger. You can add to that a gift for brightening everyone's day with her always upbeat personality and that playfully flirtatious quality that makes any man from 9 to 90 feel a lot more like a man. So I felt especially bad for her the day she'd just been rear-ended while waiting for a red light to change. We talked about her history of back problems when I discouraged her from using the weight machines the day before. I asked her if she had plans to get x-rays immediately, and she said, "Do you know what kind of lawyer I work for?" "I don't know," I said. "A good one?" "Yes," she said, "and specializing in personal injuries." 2 days later, she arrived at the pool, pissed off. "You won't believe what that guy who ran into me is trying to pull. He told my insurance company that I was fiddling with some papers, took my foot off the brake and backed into him. So I called him and said, 'Mr. So-and-so, this is Jay so-and-so.' And he said, 'I can't talk to you, call my lawyer.' And I said, 'No, Mr. So-and-so, you are going to talk to me. I want to know why you lied to my insurance company. I can't talk to you, call my lawyer.' Look, I saw the copy of the Book of Mormon on your dashboard. Aren't you ashamed of yourself for telling such a blatant lie? I can't talk to you." So I said, "Well, I just thought you'd want to know that there was a witness to the accident." And he shot back, no, there wasn't." And I said, "Well, yes, there was. There was one very important witness, the most important witness of them all. There wasn't any witness. Listen, Mr. So-and-so, I respect the religious beliefs of all who actually live by their beliefs, but you are a hypocrite. The witness to our accident was the good Lord." He gasped, and I hung up. I said, "I love that, Jay. I love that you did that." And I swam away thinking, by the time Jenny's through with this guy, he's going to think she did put her car into reverse and that she ran over his dick.
She's 88 years old and has dementia now. She put together all of these poems. I put it in a book for her. And all the poems are written about her family, her grandchildren, great-grandchildren, one about me, and about life in Los Angeles. This one is called Money. I hope everyone can relate. Money can do so many things. It can buy fancy clothes and diamond rings, long mink coats, kid skin gloves. But one thing money can't buy is love. Money can buy a worldwide trip and service at your fingertip. Gourmet food, the finest wine, but money can't buy you peace of mind. Money can buy a limousine and never in your wildest dream. But have you seen such visual effect? But money can't buy you self-respect. It's so many things money can and cannot do, but of course it's up to you. If you have money, don't you sweat it, because money won't change you if you don't let it. We all know it's understood that money can do a lot of good. When money falls into generous hands, it can change the life of a beast and a man. I like money, don't you doubt. Money is not what my life is about. The more you give, the more it grows. If you don't give, you will never know. And her name is Marie Gresham.
Manhattan Beach. This is the birthday party. Our home was on Horseshoe Trail, Valley Forge Mountain, very upscale. Winding roads, lovely woods, houses hidden from view. Thoughts of leaving it was making me blue. Boeing wanted Bert to return that summer. A program needed him. What a bummer. We would be moving then. The boys would start school with no friends again. Will, son number 3, would be 14, and he wanted friends galore to celebrate his birthday on May 24. So there was a good reason for his birthday party that season. Thus we had Will's celebration. After tennis and swimming, it was time for gustation. Burgers and fries were the fare, popular with boys everywhere. I left them alone and went to the kitchen for cake, which indeed was yummy, just right for the tummy. Bringing in the cake with candles glowing, I expected oohs and ahs, little knowing these well-bred young men from families prestigious became scurvy louts, the sleaziest. My smiling face turned to gloom as I surveyed my former dining room. Splotches of ketchup on the chairs, wall, and ceiling. Mustard, too. My senses were reeling. Out! Get out, you scurrilous scrum! William Vinegar, you are a bum. You let them splatter this room in our house. It's your last party. You're in the doghouse, I grouse.
Well, because one year we did have a spring theme for Poetry Month, I'm starting with a couple of spring poems. I thought that my wonderful husband would be here today. Between classes, he was going to drive down from Cal State Fullerton before he went to his class at Irvine, but I think he didn't make it. But I'm very, very fond of my husband, especially after 47 years of marriage, maybe only after 47 years of marriage. But, this is called Spring Cleaning. I've got the trash cans ready. The A-list, keep for sure. The B-list, negotiable. The C-list, chuck it. When I'm on a cleaning spree, you're lucky you still have sentimental value. Many of us just went on Easter egg hunts with children and grandchildren over the last week. It's always a wonderful, wonderful ritual. And I wrote this poem about discovering a relic from many Easters past. An Orient-Occident alliance. Fidencio the gardener just found an Easter egg buried Chinese style from the last great vernal hunt several years ago. I could not tell whether it was lavender or striped, or whether paraffin scribbles marked it as Dylan's or Sarah's. It withheld itself out of view all this time, mummifying, as the kids were growing strong and healthy, not to be used for dinner or dynasty or equinoctial ceremonies. It is instead its own homunculus of sun, dense, packed yellow. It wanted nothing to do with us. Thank you. I think many of us write poems to celebrate all the beatitudes and beneficences of life. For many of us, it is almost a requisite kind of activity. And it's a necessary part of making good days. This is called It Hurts, Doc. Psychiatrists, acolytes of culture, help those having imaginative trouble, an ardent ailment whose etiology is thought to be cerebral, even though the heart receives referred pain. We are not neatly head and heart Maria Causeway or any of the bifurcators of centuries ago or of the present. We are not cleaved into organs of ice and flame. Body and soul, thinking and feeling, psyche and corpus, ideas only, metaphors of form and longing that cling to one another like lovers so in love they would die without each other. And they do. Ache of the imagination requires analgesics other than aspirin or Prozac, incapable of soothing some syllogisms and tired dialectics. Ache of the imagination needs poetry and clear new thought and wonder. Lots of this.
Yeah.
I bid at a charity auction on a gondola ride for 14 people, and I won it. And it was kind of an interesting evening because there were 16 people in my immediate family, and the gondola would hold only 14. And so my husband and I thought we would wait on the shore for the rest of the family. We didn't have to ultimately because my son and granddaughter decided to row along on their paddle boards. It made me very grateful to be living at a time when I didn't have to see my little ones, my dear ones, my progeny go off to a new world, never to see them again. Gondola to the new world. For a family treat, we booked a gondola ride through the serene and glittery canals of Naples on Christmas Eve. There is room in the boat for all but two. David and I will wait for our dear ones on the shore and think of the leave-takings throughout the centuries, mothers and fathers watching their sweethearts sail off to the new world to escape famine or fanatics, the besotted young going gallantly to dreams or to dragons' mouths at the edge of the world. My beloveds will return in an hour, merry, bright, renewed. My good fortune in the arc of history to see them after their journey yet again. I was very lucky to take about 27 units from Jerry Laughlin when I was an undergraduate. And my husband-to-be took about 27 units from Jerry Laughlin as an undergraduate. And so we both have a common reference of general allusions that we learned in Jerry's class. And one of the things that we learned early on, I think, just as it was coming into being, was chaos theory. Direct application of chaos theory. The butterfly that flaps its wings half a world away produces a cause and effect that proliferates and factors in waves of change, elegant and unchartable. Here in my hemisphere, it's a goddamn mess. 50 things stacked up, and more tomorrow. Papers and files, demands and delegations, folly and phones. Consequences unimaginable with the opening and closing of the fateful Lepidoptera. Did my butterfly spread its labial wings just a bit off center? This is a love poem. Real as can be. I truck in the metaphoric empiric. Figurations you can measure, quantify, chart. I see love and hate, Keats' equilibriums of truth and beauty, precisely. I can measure decibels and chart colors. The vastness of my love for you and you and you, for all the objects of dearness, is not abstract at all, but blinding bright, leagues this deep, that wide, so far. I turn over now in my hand the associative literal, smooth as glass, green as pasture, throbbing like my heart. This is spirit brim. I am filled. The cup of me runneth over. In bounties and plenitudes, I offer generosities, sponsor giveaways. I have more than needed. There have been times I have needed to take, plunder from those I loved and from those I didn't, and I have done so. If you need some of me, call or text or email. I will put you in my calendar. This is Only Hummingbirds Fly True North. Every morning I spit on my finger and hold it to the fates. If only they would direct me simply, east, south, north, west. I do not know where to turn. I try the direction of sunrise and lean toward here or there, the door or the dresser, the ocean or inland. I plow through this blue-checked bedroom with swooping arms. The air parts to my left and right, forward and backward. There is a direction between straight and bent. The gyres dance there. The gyres that you taught me, Jerry, in Yeats. I walk that selvage, an arc of wonder and yearning. There is no light or lightness, but color is there. All day I walk this arc I cannot plot, bed to coffee pot, table to desk, sink to your arms. The zigzag makes me dizzy. The verge barely holds. All we have of salvation is frayed. Okay, I'm going to read, I think, just two more.
Excuse me, would you aim the mic at your mouth?
Okay,
Because
are you not hearing?
I'm hearing, we're here.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you for speaking up. Okay. And just stop me in the middle if you can't hear. Okay. Okay, thank you. You know, relationships are cultures. Marriage is a culture, and it's so wonderful, the accumulations that build up of knowing allusions. And I was done with pets, done with raising children, pets, And this bird started to peck at my husband's leg on the patio. You know what's coming. And it wouldn't let him go. He called animal control. Animal control came out, took the bird to the animal shelter. David went to visit the bird every day. And the minute that the bird could be adopted, David was there with a cage, brought the bird home. I said, all right, the bird is yours. You're taking care of the bird. Well, you know what's happened. This is called bird love. I could care less about the bird, which David patiently cares for, selecting the best mullet, rye, sunflower, and the freshest water. I do nothing for the well-being of our feathered pet. But it does its circle dance just for me, imagining in its bird mind my fine, resplendent plume. The biological mechanics, we call them nature, squawk the great unfairness all day long, as if any of us needed another lesson. David gets quite viciously pecked. I get yearning, unrequited, side-eyed adoration, and great round-necked swoons of bird love. This is my last poem. I have 2 sons and 1 daughter and 3 daughters-in-law whom I adore. My daughter married a lovely woman a few years ago, and they have adopted, well, actually Sarah was the biological mother of this beautiful baby, Annie, who's now 10 months old. So I wrote this poem last May, after our last poetry session, so it's new to you. And I wrote this just about a week before Annie's delivery date was scheduled. And I was wondering, it was Mother's Day, just about Mother's Day, how they were going to negotiate Mother's Day. So this is Mother's Day to 2 moms. Annie Jean, you will be born a week from tomorrow. Your birth has been booked like a reservation at Chianina. You are standing straight in the womb, facing forward like a Chinese terracotta warrior, imperial, majestic. You are the yearnings and sweetness of 2 moms. The museum frame has double Madonnas and 1 child. Mary Cassette will need more paint for figuration. Your lullaby will be sung in harmony. The bow will break twice. You will play catch infield and out and slam 2 doors at 13. At mother-daughter teas, you will have 2 crafts. And on Mother's Days to come, you will make 4 eggs, 6 sausages, 2 cards with red hearts and purple scribbles, and climb the stairs on North 25th Street, unaware you are a warrior of dreams.
Write a poem and to make it into a scrapbook that I put in a frame. And it's called My Baby Girl. My baby girl, all grown up, certainly seems like yesterday when introduced in UCLA maternity ward. It was like yesterday. I created a fashionable leopard suit for you. Yes, it was. Just yesterday, Goldie D and Grandmomsy spent precious times together. Can't be longer than yesterday. You asked to be dressed like Santa Claus and shared Christmas gifts with others. Really, wasn't it yesterday? In my heels, discussions about science were held ambitiously with Dad. Yes, my baby girl, you have graciously entered today. Thank you.
Who are no longer with us. for quite different reasons. The first one is by a very good friend of mine who passed away last month, named Michael O'Kane. And these gentlemen, ladies, I'm certain met him in the memo class. Is that correct?
Actually, it was in an exercise class.
He passed away quite gently. And his wife gave me one of his poems. Closer, good. And I'm going to read it now.
Good.
No poem. No. There is no poem within me. No words of rhyme or alliterate. No meter drum beating in the night. No stanzas standing on their own. Only my heart asking for a way to sing of this happy stage in my crazy life. And I thank you for Michael. The other one came out of a scrapbook. I was digging in my old records, putting pictures that I've never seen for years. And I saw that there was a boy of 17 who wrote what he thought was a sonnet. And gee, it wasn't too bad. So you're not going to remember how it like at 17 and how serious you are. Sonnet on solar things. The drifting clouds are tangled in the moon for just a space, and then they pull away and leave the silver circle still serene, majestic, and eternal grace now seen. Transmitting golden spirit of the sun into caresses, now quite softly done. Oh, be forever in thy dwelling place, to be a calming picture to our eyes, seem always in our thoughts an arbiter, always gleams compassion for our sighs. A nightly intercessor try to be between the noisy, troubled world and me.
In fact, I feel it's an honor to be videoed, everybody up here. The poem I'm going to read is Unfastened by Eric Morago, and it's for the 101-year-old woman who paraglided for her birthday and lived. And I have to explain how she paraglided. There was, the pilot sat behind her, and she sat right next against him, so she was gliding on this glider. When they fastened the harness, explained its aerodynamics, the means by which you'd fly, did you imagine it come that easy to your bones? How the arthritis would chip away like chiseled rock, leave you so weightless, birds believed you goddess? Before you became a 101-year-old fireworks show, had you already known your body was built for the sky? Your skin always wind-chimed song? Look at you now, hanging in the air like a wish. You are so free, it is as if you divorced gravity. Slip the wedding band off like a straitjacket and put on your best-looking dress. One that makes the roaring 20s come alive in your chest again. Where the band plays into early morning and your dance is a climb in altitude. We cannot help but marvel at your flight. Its record-breaking reminder how our years do not have to anchor us to this earth. How all our bodies can refuse physics and the cruel principles of time. Thank you for this gift. Your promise we are each our own miracle, suspended below a hollow fabric wing of hope. How, if we just let go, unfastened from all this disbelief, we would not
The first poem might ruffle a few feathers. It's called The Choir of Stars. Last night, when my soul, my muse, and I died, we found ourselves in an ethereal place, neither up nor down, nor night nor day, where time had simply gone away. And there, ensconced in comfy chairs, Mohammed, Moses, and Siddhartha sat. And by a nearby bench of wood, a wan but smiling Jesus stood. All four prepared to teach us. All four prepared to reach us. And we, my soul, my muse, and I, attended to these sages, confidently awaiting the wisdom of the ages. Around us, galaxies grew, and round moons around spinning planets spun, and blue suns loomed, and comets flew, and from a choir of stars a hymn was sung. All this, somewhere in timeless space, my soul, my muse, and I embraced. When asked what truths they understood, Mohammed said, Allah is great and good. Maybe, Moses gruffly spoke, but God's word is in our holy book. At this, Siddhartha, with a puzzled look, asked, must you have a God at all? Then Jesus, standing gaunt and tall, preached, there are three, the Spirit, the Father, and the Son, who simultaneously are one. And though I be the Son of Man, before Abraham was, I am. This homily sparked a long debate, filled with animosity and hate. Eventually, our lesson through, I asked my soul, what shall we do? My soul replied, let's ask our muse. But even she was quite confused. And this one is called Sought and Found. It's from my book, Sweet Catastrophe. I thought I'd try to find the place where beauty hides. She's such a shy, reclusive thing, and fragile as a whisper. First, I sought her in a forest, barely green, where streams and rainbow flowers lived. I looked behind lordly trees, in burrows where furred things grow, and in meadows where fawns like children played. But though beauty had sung duets with morning, and bathed in waterfalls at dawn, for me, beauty, like the night, had gone. I saw her on the ocean next, near shore where sunlight lit the sand, then further out where wind and waves waged war beneath the cowering sky. But beauty, fearing the sea's changing face, had fled Neptune's angry place. I then pursued the three great books, the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, and there often found pages touched by beauty's gentle hand. Such contemplation proved enlightening. Thought sang to me her song. But though to religion beauty showed her form, to me her veil was long. I sought but could not find her. I looked but could not see. I sorrowed because beauty would not favor me. Finally, my futile hunt ended in my home as night began to blink her starry eyes. And there I found beauty in the kitchen with my wife, humming songs and peeling peaches with a knife.
This capacious view of what poetry is acceptable, and also that curmudgeons are welcome. Because this poem that I've chosen for today is sort of a 99% poem. It's inspired, if that's the word, by something that was said by a genuine member of the 1%, a gentleman, Stephen Schwartzman. He's the CEO of Blackstone Group, has an estimated worth of $10 billion. And what he said was, 45% of Americans don't pay any income tax. You have to have skin in the game. I thought that was an interesting statement. I'd like to expand on that to flesh it out, if you will. So this is that effort, skin in the game. Your mamas scrubbed our floors down on their hands and their knees. Your daddies worked our fields and some swung from our trees. Your brothers filled the cell blocks of our penitentiaries. Be thankful. You are living in the land of the free. Some of you are brown-skinned and some others are black. Your children fought the war when we invaded Iraq. When you put your hands up, the cops may have to attack. Don't listen to those fools who claim the deck has been stacked. You got no skin in the game. Blood and guts aren't the same. Money is the measure. You've no skin in the game. You're working 50 hours, but you can't pay the rent. You think a strong economy means full employment. You don't even know the Dow just dropped 2%, and you think you should have some say in our government? You got no skin in the game. You know we're not to blame. Your net worth is near zero. You've no skin in the game. We worked hard at prep school and at Harvard and Yale. We built it ourselves. We're the new alpha males. We know judges and attorneys, so we don't go to jail. We earned the right to rule because we're too big to fail. We have skin in the game. We deserve your acclaim. You should pay our taxes. Get some skin in the game. Thank you.
That is Hermosa Beach, beautiful Hermosa Beach. And I wrote this, I'm Ute Lorenz Röpke, and I wrote this to dedicate this poem to my grandchildren, Turner, Ty, and Kalia Conrad. So, Hermosa is a lovely place. For some, it is a perfect space, enjoying work and play each day, where everybody wants to stay. Let's go to see Hermosa Beach. Here's a town in easy reach for surfing, volleyball, and fun, while some enjoy a daily run. The strand is busy every day with bikes and strollers on the way, and stand-up paddlers in the ocean delight the eye with perfect motion. For just a couple of weeks each year, there are tall dunes beside the pier. Kids of all ages slide and play while parents have a lovely day. Swimming along the beach is fine, especially in summertime. A whale may join you any day while going southward far away. Enjoy your fishing at the pier and meet with friends from far and near. Then watch the dolphins going by and all the seagulls flying high. Watching a sunset is peace of mind and takes away the daily grind. When sailboats drift across the sea, it's happiness for you and me. Let's not forget Hermosa Faire or race excitement in the air. At Christmas time, with lights so bright, Pier Plaza is a joyous sight. The plaza sparkles by day and night, and evening out is a true delight. Old friends, new friends enjoy the food, which is so plentiful and good. A million thanks, Hermosa Beach. I'm glad you are in easy reach for sports and fun all through the year, and memories so grand and dear.
Poetry for Laughing Out Loud by Richard O. Jones. And the poem that I chose reminds me of where my husband and I are going. It's called Write It Down. As an older couple sat on their front porch, the husband says, "I'm going to make a glass of tea." The wife responded, "Honey, while you're there, please make a glass for me." She yelled to him, "Honey, write it down." The old man called back, "I won't forget." She said, "But you walked off as I was still talking, and you don't have my full order yet." I want 3 ice cubes in my tea and lightly grilled cheese toast for a snack. I think you better write it down before you bring the wrong order back. He yelled, "I don't need to write it down. You want iced tea with 3 ice cubes and lightly grilled cheese toast. You're beginning to give me the blues." 5 minutes later, he returned with a glass of warm milk on a tray. "I told you, old woman, I won't forget," the man began to proudly say. She looked at him with compassion and gave her head a shake and said, "Honey, I told you to write it down. You forgot my piece of cake."
I guess everybody's childhood by Lewis Carroll. I fell in love with Lewis Carroll, and I fell in love with this poem. It's called Father Williams. "You are old, Father Williams," the young man said, "and your hair has become very white, and yet you insistently stand on your head. Do you think at your age this is right?" "In my youth," Father Williams replied to his son, "I feared it might injure my brain, but now that I'm certain I don't have one, will I do it again and again." "You are old," said the youth, "and your jaws are too weak, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned the back somersaults into the door. Pray what is the reason for that?" "In my youth," said the sage, as he shook his gray locks, "I kept all my limbs very supple, and by use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box. Allow me to sell you a couple." "You are old," said the youth, "and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray tell me, how did you do it?" "In my youth," said the father, "I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength that it gave to my jaw has lasted me all of my life." "You are old," said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eyes was as steady as ever, yet you balanced the eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever?" "I have answered the questions, and that is enough," said the father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off."
We now have an extra special guest to read her poem, and this is our organizer and student assistant in OLLI and an English major on this campus and a communication minor. Letha, please.
I'm actually learning from you guys. I'm taking the tips down, writing them down, because I do poetry in my spare time. I actually do spoken word poetry. I'm on the slam team here at the school and things like that. So I have 2. One of them is one I wrote a long time ago, and I won a prize for it, so I'm like, it's worth something. And then the second one, we're having an academic contest on campus called America Happens Here, Reflections on Making It Real, so you guys will get the sneak peek before I turn it in. So the first one is called My Process of Change. Change is a concept I find hard to grasp. I find it funny how some view it as an effortless task. To alter, to modify, to transform me. By the sound of those words, I know it can't be easy. Now see, I was born with a dominant attitude ingrained in me. I mean, when I say it's going to go this way or that way, that's exactly how it's going to be. Now it's gotten me in trouble, even sent out of class. To work in a group, don't even ask. But as I move on, about to graduate and experience new situations, I know I need to change before somebody sends me on a long vacation. But sometimes I sit back and I'm like, well, what can I say? My dads, my aunts, my uncles, they all act the same way. But then I think it would be a crying shame for me to point them out as the ones to blame. I blame myself for always having a distorted view, for thinking that having the queen bee attitude was the thing to do. So as I sit back and I'm about to go on and try new things, I think it's time for me to make that change. Now the second one I don't have memorized yet, because like I told you guys, I'm turning it in to try to win. I tried last year and I made a video and I didn't win, so I'm like, I'm gonna use my strengths and hopefully I'll win this time. So this one, I haven't titled it yet, but hopefully I'll come up with a title after this. America is not that white picket fence. America is trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. Debating on whether to pay the phone bill or life insurance, knowing that going without either is questionable if I factor in the rent. America is not that suburban neighborhood. It's living in a hood and hoping the neighbors will cut their music off in time enough for me to study for my midterm. It's walking to the corner store and realizing that the local calligraphy comes in the form of graffiti, plastered on the side of the buildings, only to be cleaned off and painted over by that city employee with the bad back, working overtime to ensure that his family doesn't move back into that shack that he grew up in. America is not the kids playing in the yard. America is shoving a tablet in the child's face because it isn't safe to play outside. It's worrying about who's going to pick up little Jamal after the after-school program closes, or who's going to take care of baby Mia while you're in class because the university's daycare closes at 5 and class ends at 6:45. America is not that two-parent household. It's that single mother who lost her husband to cancer and has to raise 4 teenagers. It's that daughter that was watching her mother struggle and is willing to drop everything, putting her mother before her schoolwork. It's that young man deciding whether to continue college or drop out and get a job because otherwise he feels like less of a man. It's the same young man getting used to making money but beating himself up because he knows that that degree will help him get farther in life, farther than his father ever did. America is not that 1%. It's that 99% that attend schools here. It's those diverse threads that make up the American fabric. It's that bunch of people that's looking forward to graduating, but dreading it because graduation means paying back the loans that we work so hard to maintain. America is not that white picket fence. America is not that suburban neighborhood. America is not the 2 kids playing in the yard. America is not that 2-parent home. America is not that 1%. America is struggling, hoping, praying, believing, hoping, achieving, crying because it's hard, but rejoicing because the tassel is worth the hassle. America is you, America is me, America's reality.